Good morning, Maddie. How are you? I hope you're enjoying Pattaya. I am certainly enjoying Turtle Beach, as always. I've received the book, Phuket Vignettes, by this guy, Steve Rosse. I have my glasses on, so I don't know where the name is on the cover. Anyway, thank you for sending the book. I'm very happy to read it for you. I got a cup of coffee. I got a glass of water. It's 5 minutes to 6 a.m. This is the first time we've done this. I reckon I can probably get through about 3 stories in 15 minutes. I want to keep these down to 15 minutes or so because I know you're a busy guy. You got places to go and people to see. So we're going to dive right in. I'm going to take off my glasses to do this. And I don't know, I got something going on. I just woke up about an hour ago. I got something going on here, like a pimple and then swelling. I don't know, maybe it's a bug bite. Arachnid assault, that is what medical records call a spider bite. If you've ever had a spider bite, arachnid assault. I love that phrase. All right, Thai vignettes, Phuket and beyond. I want to stress, I didn't pick this cover. I didn't pick the title. I called it Phuket Vignettes. The publisher thought he'd sell more books if he made it more Thai general. All the stories are set on Phuket in the 1990s, but the publisher thought he'd sell more books, and that's what's important. We begin. Thai Vignettes, Phuket and Beyond by Steve Rosse, and I just blew out my eustachian tube. What a drag it is getting old, huh? For Mom, Andy, and Mandy. Acknowledgements. Now I'm not going to start with the acknowledgements. I thank the editors and the people I knew back then. It's signed February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2005. That's when they published this book. Or that's when they asked me for an acknowledgments page. I'm not going to read that for you. Table of contents, I am similarly not going to read that for you. All right, first story is called Wait Until Dark. It is almost 6 o'clock when the 2 Japanese girls come into the Phuket Yacht Club's quarterdeck restaurant. Tama Noon is standing by a potted palm, his hands elegantly folded around a menu, staring out at the boats on the bay. This time of year, just after the King's Cup Regatta, the bay is full of boats and the hotel is nearly empty of guests. Tamanoon loves to watch the boats. He resents the intrusion of the 2 Japanese girls, though 1,000 years of Asian culture and 4 years of training in the hotel make it impossible for him to show it. 6 o'clock is the slowest time of day in the restaurant. Most of the guests will wait for the evening to cool down before eating their final meal. Kamon is on his break and Wiwat is in English class, so Tamanoon is alone on the restaurant floor. He leaves the shadow of the potted palm and glides forward to meet the Japanese girls. Oh. Good evening, Miss Miko-san, Miss Miyagi-san. How are you? Tamanoon knows the girls from their last stay at the hotel, and he gives him his number 4 smile with the greeting. They've just come from the pool, and their hair is wet where it hangs down over their white terry cloth robes. He sneaks a look over Miss Miko-san's shoulder at the boats on the bay. Miss Miyagi-san has the best English, and she always speaks for the pair. We are fine, thank you. And you? Her words carry the same rehearsed quality that Tamanoon's do. I am fine, thank you. Would this table be all right? Yes, thank you. He holds their chairs and opens the menus before presenting them. all the time smiling and making warm eye contact. Tamanoon makes the best tips of any of the waiters. He has his eye on a new motorcycle, and his parents want him to marry Ying, the village headman's daughter. He could have one or the other on his salary, but not both. He needs his tips. As he pours their water and gently lays their napkins across their laps, his gaze flits over the heads of the Japanese girls to the bay, to the shadows of almost 100 masts rapidly lengthening across the flat water as the sun goes down. Miss Miyagi-san orders spaghetti with meat sauce for them both and some sweet drinks from the bar. Tamanoon takes the order into the kitchen as quickly as he can and still maintain decorum. He doesn't like to leave the dining room this time of day. He's afraid it'll happen and he'll miss it. He stands by the bar and waits for their drinks and watches the sky turning red over the ocean. He can see hundreds of cars and buses lined up on the lookout point at Phuket Cape, and streaks of crimson run down the masts of the windmills at the government power station. When he brings them their drinks, the Japanese girls are each staring into a compact mirror and applying snowy white powder to their faces. He arrives at the table, places the tall glasses topped with paper umbrellas and fruit. He places the tall glasses topped with fruit and paper umbrellas onto the starched linen tablecloth, smiles at each of them, and retreats. At no point does he make any sound. The girls each take out slim cigarettes, light them, toss their hair once, and taste their drinks. They judge the drinks acceptable and begin to talk in rapid giggles. Tamanoon is watching anxiously now. He's afraid that the girl's order will be ready while it's happening and he'll miss it. The sunset is magnificent, and the tourists on the lookout point are taking pictures. In the dimming light, Tamanoon can see the flashes of their cameras. The eastern sky is darkening, and a stillness has fallen. The sea is dead calm now, without a breath of wind, and despite the vaulted ceilings and open walls on three sides, it seems stuffy in the restaurant. Tamanoon hears the bell from the kitchen and fairly jumps to get the orders. He brings the girls their spaghetti as fast as he dares, lays the food on the table with a grace and economy of motion that would give a bullfighter a long and healthy career, supplies the condiments and cheese, and says, "Would there be anything else?" "No, thank you," says Miss Miyagi-san, and Tamanoon is away to his potted palm. He positions himself so that it appears as though he's looking in the direction of where Miss Miyagi-san is trying to teach Miss Miko-san how to twirl the spaghetti around the fork in the bowl of her spoon. But in fact, his attention is completely at sea. He has no thoughts of the new motorcycle now, no thoughts of marriage or his job or the boxing match that he'll watch on TV later. His whole world for this moment is the bay and the boats. And as the sun disappears below the horizon and the long lines of buses and cars begin to creep down the mountain from Phuket Cape, the wind picks up again. But now the wind is from offshore, and the windmills and then all the boats turn to face it. The lighter boats first, and then the larger ones, swinging around 180 degrees on their anchor chains like a flock of birds wheeling in the sky. And Tamanoon is rooted to the spot, oblivious to the Japanese girls calling for more drinks, as in the bloody glow of the dying sun, all the beautiful boats are dancing just for him. All right, what's that? 3 minutes? Yeah. All right, you want to do a couple more? You got time, bud? I have time. Pardon me. That's why I don't wear a lavalier. Oh, I like this one very much. You know, that first one was written, I was teaching English at the Phuket Yacht Club. And then I got hired as a journalist to cover the King's Cup Regatta. And I came into that place as a guest instead of as an employee for the first time. Whole different world. This is called Three Faces of Eve. And it's about an old girlfriend of mine, a woman who broke my heart. A man walked into a small tavern on Soi Bang La on the afternoon of an especially hot day in the dry season. He stood in the door a moment and allowed his eyes to grow accustomed to the dim light, wiping sweat off his face with the tail of his Tintin on Phuket t-shirt. When he could make out shapes in the gloom, he felt his way across the room and sank gratefully onto a stool at the bar. "Would you like something to drink?" These words came from a woman of middle age who had been asleep on the counter behind the bar, waking up at the sound of the creaking wicker stool and the man's grunt. She looked red-eyed and frazzle-haired, but she was wide awake in a moment and making motions at straightening her clothes. Her name was Noi, and she was 45 years old. 10 years before, Noi had been a fairly well-known actress in Bangkok, starting out playing the ingenue in TV dramas. But as the years went by and they started to cast her as the older sister, then as the scorned wife, and finally as the mother, she turned her energies to producing. She had some success putting together commercials for some of the larger ad agencies. Then one day, disaster struck. She had paid for the production of a deodorant spot with post-dated checks. This is not uncommon in the industry, but the client hated the spot and refused to pay Noi, leaving her holding the bag on 1,000,000 baht in bad paper. She left Bangkok, changed her name, and purchased a 50% share in the bar on Soi Bang La. She was drinking herself quickly into bankruptcy and the grave. She knew it. She didn't give a damn. "I'll have a beer, sweetheart," said the man. I have no idea what accent that is, sorry. Noi called out to Nung, who was reading a comic book on a chair on the sidewalk in front of the bar. Nung put down her book in no great hurry and sauntered inside. She was a teenager, wearing jeans and a body glove t-shirt, with fresh skin and a page boy haircut. It was a glimpse of Nung, spread lazily in front of the bar with one leg thrown over the arm of a chair, twirling a lock of her bangs around one finger and moving her lips slightly as she read her book that had drawn the man to this bar. She was what is known around Phuket as the designated virgin. Usually this will be somebody's niece or little sister, cute and perky, just helping out around the bar since they're too young to work legally. They wash glasses and tend the bar, but they're really just honey to attract flies, which the older girls will then snap up like hungry lizards. In point of fact, she was not a virgin. She had given up that title to a young Englishman named Spencer. He was a sound engineer for a punk band in Manchester, and he'd come to Phuket when he cut his hand on a broken beer bottle, couldn't twirl knobs anymore. In 2 months, Spencer had spent all of his money, a lot of his father's money, given himself alcohol poisoning on 2 occasions, and swept Nung off her feet by claiming to know Axl Rose. He disappeared, leaving behind 40,000 baht in unpaid bar bills and a sadder but wiser Nung. The other girls all told her that she was crazy and stupid for having given away something so valuable. And she knew they were right. But still in all, she loved Spencer, and she wished he would come back. "Make sure it's a cold one, sweetheart. And say, what's your name?" asked the man, in an unidentifiable accent, apparently. Nung pulled the first bottle she could see out of the ice, put it in a foam sleeve, and slid it along the bar to the man without answering. She wrote out his bill, looking at him for a moment to take note of some distinguishing feature to write on the top of the bill. She wrote "torn shirt" in tie on the slip of paper and put it in a bamboo cup in front of the man. And after that, he ceased to exist in Nung's universe. She picked up a nail file and leaned against the bar, knowing that Noi wouldn't allow her to go back outside as long as the man was drinking. But she put her back towards him and gave him her complete attention to her nails.
"Hey, sexy man, where you come from?"
Out of the gloom at the back of the bar, another woman glided up to the man and perched herself on the stool next to his. She was painfully thin, except for a pair of obviously augmented breasts. The whites of her eyes were stained brown by years of opium abuse, and she had some smeary tattoos on her arms. She leaned over the man, pushing her enormous breasts at him and giving him a smile that showed a lot of enthusiasm and some really bad teeth. Over the waistband of her cut-off shorts, he could see the top of a C-section scar. She began to run her hand up and down his thigh, keeping up a patter of pidgin English, liberally peppered with the phrase, "Godverdammit." Her name was Odd. She was 34 years old. She came from the Northeast. Her first job, other than scrabbling for a living in the fields with her family, was in a crib brothel in Bangkok. When she'd worked there for 2 years and paid off the amount of money her father had received by selling her there, she left the brothel and took a bus for Pattaya. She'd been in business for herself ever since then. She'd never returned home. A year after arriving in Pattaya, Ott met a young boy from Amsterdam who was on vacation with his parents. Ott was the boy's first sexual partner. He fell in love with her and ran away from his parents, taking a big stack of traveler's checks with him. His father found them, but the boy refused to leave without Ott. Because his family wanted him back at school, Ott got to see Holland. She and the boy were married, lived in an apartment off campus, and Ott quickly had 2 kids. But father and mother weren't happy with her, and one day the police busted the boy with some heroin, and it was Ott who took the rap. She was sent back to Bangkok without money, clothes, or babies. All she carried out of the Netherlands was the phrase, "Godverdammit." It had been 15 years. And try as she might, there was no way to go back. Not for a girl with a prior drug conviction. In all that time, she had not received a single card or letter from her husband. The only address she had was her in-laws, and she knew what happened to her letters there. She had not seen so much as a photograph of her babies in all that time. But the day never went by that she didn't think about them. The man grew tired of Ott's flirting and refused to buy her a drink or play dominoes. He spotted a friend walking past on the sidewalk. He put some money on the bar and rushed out. As he walked up Soi Bangla with his friend, he was asked, "So how was that place you were in? I've never been in there before." "It's nothing. Really dead," the man replied. "Not a soul in the place." There's a longer version of that story published somewhere. I met Ott to buy drugs, of course. But I knew a little bit of Thai, and she had this box of poems that she had written for her children for like almost 20 years. She'd been writing poems to and about and for her children. She had no way to get them to the family in Holland, and she thought if she could get them translated into Dutch, she might have better luck if she mailed them to her in-laws. But to get them translated into Dutch, she needed them in English first, so she asked me to translate about 20 of these letters, and it was way over my head. My Thai language skills were not up to doing the translating job, and she was really, really disappointed. I mean, 20 years later, she still was determined to somehow contact her babies. And eventually the cops busted her and took her away for selling drugs, and I don't know whatever happened to Aude. But, yeah, it's a sad story. She is not the woman in the story who broke my heart, yeah. Oh, I like this one. I think you'll get a kick out of this one, Maddie. Parlor, bedroom, and bath. I'm terrible with titles. All the titles of these stories are titles of classic movies. My first job writing in Thailand was reviewing movies for the Phuket Gazette, or for Phuket Magazine. And so when I put this manuscript together, obviously when they were newspaper columns, I didn't write a headline, I didn't write a title. The editor at the newspaper would fill in the blank space on the page with as many words as he could. So when I gathered the manuscript together to make a book out of these, I had to come up with titles for 50 stories all at once. So I just went to Leonard Maltin's book and picked movie titles that had something to do, I thought, with the story. So this one's called Parlor, Bedroom, and Bath. The tourist walked through the glass doors and was hit by a blast of frigid air. Outside, the place was decorated with a bas relief of the Eiffel Tower and strings of Christmas tree lights. Its name was the Casbah Turkish Baths. Inside, it was very dim, but he could see enough to make his way to a bench along the wall where he sat down. He was immediately joined by a smiling fat man in a dirty black jacket and plaid pants. "Hello, my friend," said the jolly fat man, as if he had been waiting for the tourist and was genuinely glad to see him. He sat down and slapped a meaty hand onto the tourist's thigh, which he began to squeeze mightily. Across from them was a glass wall, and while the room on the men's side of the glass was cocktail lounge gloomy, on the other side it was operating theater bright. About 10 girls sat there on a series of tiers, like bleachers in a stadium. They were watching an old TV, which was placed with its back to the glass. They ranged in age from about 25 to well over 40, and most wore ill-fitting party frocks. They all had numbered badges pinned to their blouses. Some were knitting with rapid movements of their fingers. The tourist lit a cigarette to hide his nervousness, and at the sight of his Marlboros, the pimp grinned and licked his chops. The tourist offered him the pack, and the tout took it with a quick nod of his head. He examined the tax seal and enthused over their American origin. This was when you couldn't, buy cigarettes legally in Thailand, not foreign cigarettes. It's a long time ago, Maddie. The tourist told him to keep the rest of the pack. There were big smiles all around. Against the other wall sat a few local men, mostly dressed in slacks and polo shirts, all smoking. They all seemed relaxed, as if they did this every day. The tourist tried to copy them, leaning back and savoring his cigarette. It tasted sour in his mouth, and he was suddenly very thirsty. You like? The fat man wheezed at him. Front row, all very young, very beautiful. He leaned over, placing his thick lips against the tourist's ear. Number 47, very good girl, very good, sir, whispered the pimp, as if this was a secret for the tourist ears only. One of the men on the other bench beckoned to the grungy tout, who sprang up with surprising agility and waddled across the room. The customer stood to meet him, stretching lazily, and said a few quiet words. Money changed hands, and the tourist tried to see how much, but he couldn't see in the dim light. The pimp went to a microphone and said something into it, and a girl in the third row wearing number 40 picked up her purse and moved to a doorway. Her eyes never left the TV. She didn't display any interest in which man had selected her. "Number 29, coconuts," said the pimp, huffing and puffing back to the tourist and holding his hands out as if clutching a pair of basketballs to his chest. "You like?" he ventured. The tourist looked closely at the front row of girls. They were all attractive, with long black hair, almond eyes, and brightly painted red mouths. They sat with their legs crossed, some leaning on each other, one girl brushing another girl's hair. There was a girl in a frilly red dress, like someone who got dressed 10 years too late for the senior prom. She had number 17 pinned on like a corsage. "Well, number 17 is cute," said the tourist without conviction. Immediately, the pimp was back at the microphone, and the girl in the red dress picked up her bag and stood up. She swung her long black hair over her shoulder, and without a word to the other girls, she went out the door. The pimp was standing in front of the tourist now, grinning. "Very good girl, sir. Very new. Only work 1 week. 1,000 now, please." 1,000 baht. Yeah, 30 years ago, man. The tourist pulled some bills out of his pants pocket. The money was a thick wad of paper, notes of several different colors and sizes, mixed together with the receipt from the airport currency exchange. He tried to read the figures printed on them in the dim light, but finally just allowed the pimp to sort out 2 purple notes. Was money different sizes back then? It's not now. It's different colors, different denominations, different colors. Is money different? It's not now. Steve, was it really different, like different size bills back then, so blind people could count money? The pimp pulled the tourist toward the side door. The man who had gone out before with number 40 was coming back as they went through. The tourist was sure he couldn't have been gone more than a few minutes. He could have been smoking the same cigarette. They didn't make eye contact as they brushed past each other, but the tourist caught a whiff of soap and baby powder. In the next room was a desk, and a very bored-looking old woman was behind it, also watching TV. There was an old dog asleep on the floor. The girl in the red dress was standing at the desk, loading towels, sheets, and a bar of soap into a plastic basket. She turned to go up a flight of stairs, being careful not to tread on the sleeping dog. She didn't look at her customer once. She started up the stairs, and the grimy pimp urged the tourist to follow. At the first landing, the tourist saw the girl leave behind her shoes, in a row of other tiny feminine footwear. There was also a row of men's shoes, mostly loafers. He watched the unconscious swing of her hips as she made her way up the stairs. His gaze traveled down the runs in her pantyhose all the way to the flat, square feet of someone raised barefoot. The tourist missed a tread and fell on the stairs, his hands scattering the shoes on the landing. The girl turned with a frown, and seeing him trying to catch the shoes as they tumbled down the steps, she came down to help. The pimp tried to come up to help, and they all jostled each other around in the cramped space for a few seconds, trying to catch and match the shoes. The girl was above the tourist, bending down, trying to reach past him, and her breasts were clearly visible inside the bodice of her dress, an inch from his nose. He could see the stretch marks on them, and the veins under the skin. He was enveloped by her cheap perfume and another odor like rancid cooking oil that came up at him from the fat pimp. The girl bumped his chin with her head, and he knew she was wearing a wig. The tourist dropped the shoes he was holding onto the steps, and he bolted. He had to go over the pimp to pass him on the narrow stairs, and he leapt over the sleeping dog at the bottom as well. He sped past the old woman at the desk, who was screaming with laughter, and through the door into the waiting room. The pimp came shouting after him, and the men in the waiting room all jumped up nervously. The tourist passed through the glass doors to the street at a dead run and raced across the parking lot between the waiting taxis. He was out of sight of the plaster Eiffel Tower before he slowed down. The fat man stood in the doorway, looking after the tourist and wiping sweat off his face with a dirty handkerchief. He shrugged, said "Farang," and spat theatrically onto the ground. The girl in the red dress resumed her place behind the glass wall and gave her attention to the TV. The old woman finished reorganizing the pile of shoes on the landing, cursing softly in Chinese. The old dog watched her fondly for a moment, scratched himself, and went back to sleep. All right, that's 3. Oh my God, that's 25 minutes. Dude, I hope you like it. Let me know. Send me an email and let me know if you like it. If you do, this is your channel, dude, and I'll just read, I don't know, maybe all 5 books. I don't have 2 of them on printed on paper. And I hate to read off an e-reader. I don't have the PDFs anymore. I don't know, 2 of them, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But there's 3 books of short stories, and if you like this, I'll keep doing it. I'm very happy. I haven't read these stories. You know, I wrote these 35 years ago. I've sold them to all kinds of newspapers and magazines. They've been published in books. I'm getting paid for these books, for these stories, for this writing for 35 years. I no longer remember writing any of this, really. I remember my office, I remember my desk, I remember my typewriter. These were all typed on paper on a Korean portable typewriter. Clack, 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 clack. And then faxed to the various magazines and newspapers. That's how old these are. And I haven't read a lot of them, in a long, long time. So thank you for this opportunity, Maddie. I hope you like it. Let me know. That's it. Peace out. I'll see you again in a week. How about that? We do this once a week. Let me know. Bye.